Welcome to Believe in Chiefs, part of the Believe Network. Joined by former Chiefs offensive lineman Joe Valerio, I'm Jeff Fedotin. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, and follow this podcast and tell all of your Chiefs fans to do the same. You can also watch us on Believe TV around the country, in airports, and on YouTube. On this week's show, we welcome Adam Teicher, the Chiefs beat reporter for ESPN. It's Adam's last year on the beat, so we had to have him on at least one more time before he bid adieu.
Yeah, it's great to be with you guys, and it's only fitting. Joe was on the first team that I covered way back in the day, 150 years ago. So
remember the leather helmets? Remember how bad the leather helmets smelled? Adam in the locker room, and
actually, I remember no helmets at all. It was just free-form football there, wing tee and all that stuff.
Adam, congratulations on an incredible career, and what a journey you've been on. We can't even begin to capture the stories, the memories, and all the things that you've probably experienced doing what you've done for so long. But thank you for being with us and sharing some of them with us in our limited
this will
time.
Be fun. I'm looking forward to it, no doubt.
You know, Adam, we'll obviously reflect on some of the past teams with Joe on it. Also, good sign that didn't deter you from the Chiefs beat. You stuck with it despite, Joe did nothing to dissuade you from continuing on with this Chiefs career. But one of the things that I think that one of the strengths in stories of the season, it has been the Chiefs' run defense. It's just been phenomenal. They have 3 goal line stands, I believe, and how has it gotten so good? What do you attribute their success to, Adam?
I think they're just so well coached. Mm-hmm. I think they know what they're doing. They know how to line up. They know where to go. They know what to do. I just feel like that group, and it's a veteran group. It's not a bunch of new guys. It's basically the same group on defense, minus a player or two that they were playing last year. So I think it's more. It's mostly that they're just everybody does what they're supposed to do. And they've got some good players on top of that. Chris Jones has been disruptive. So I just feel like everything is sort of fitting together for that group.
Adam, do you believe that would you agree with us that this team is living out the cliche that offenses win games and defenses win championships? I mean, are they in that sort of a bucket right now in your mind, or are they still an offensive powerhouse that happens to have a great defense? Where would you categorize this team?
You can't describe the Chiefs as an offensive powerhouse anymore. Certainly not last year, and not a whole lot better this year. The last few games, their average, I think, 27 a game. So that's not bad. I mean, you'll certainly accept that, but it's not what we know it to be earlier in the Pat Mahomes time as the starting quarterbacks. So certainly they're built around their defense. I mean, the defense is going to have to carry its fair share of the load and then some, maybe, if the Chiefs are going to get to another Super Bowl championship. And so far, at least, it looks like they're capable of doing that.
The latest news, of course, to that defense is adding Josh Uche. Joe, that's fun to say, by the way, if nothing else. Adam, were you surprised by this move? And what do you think he adds to the team?
Yeah. Not really surprised, but here's sort of the difference between this and the DeAndre Hopkins trade the Chiefs made the week before, is that Uche, the Chiefs weren't looking necessarily for a pass rusher. They saw a guy out there and they looked at it and said, this guy can make us better than we are now. We don't have to have him, unlike DeAndre Hopkins, but we could, he would make us better. If the price is right, let's go ahead and do it. And the price was right. They're giving up a 6th round pick. Maybe they get a comp pick back in return if he leaves as a free agent. So at the end of the year. So it is one of those deals where the Chiefs just saw a good deal coming across their desk and said, yep, there's a good chance he could make us better. And so now the Chiefs are deeper with their edge rushers. They've got, once Charles Omenihu comes back, and they're expecting him back in the next month or so, the Chiefs will have a pretty deep group of edge rushers, some of whom, guys like Mike Dana and George Karlaftis, are capable of moving inside to pair with Chris Jones. So they got what they feel will be a deep arsenal of pass rushers there. So this move, combined with the return of Charles Omenihu, could make a difference come playoff time. We'll see.
So, Adam, you think it's just was too good a deal to pass up? It's not a commentary on Dana's injury or Omenihu's taken too long or something like that?
No, I think that Mike Dana has a chance to play Monday night in Tampa Bay, against Tampa Bay. I don't know that for sure, but I think he's got a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And if he doesn't play against Tampa Bay, he'll play. I'm almost positive the following week against Denver. So his return is imminent. I really feel that way. And then as far as Omenihu, no. I mean, he got hurt in January last year, so he's not really behind any timeline or anything like that. The Chiefs are still comfortable that he's going to be back at some point during the regular season, and probably with enough time to get ready to go for the playoffs.
That's great.
Adam, going back a little bit, do you put eras around, sort of your coverage of the Chiefs? Like, do you say, well, it was the Marty era, and do you do it by coach? Do you do it by the groups of players, a combination of both? Like, you've been doing this a long time. How do you think about these teams when you want to reflect on your incredible career and covering this team for so long?
Yeah, the coaches are definitely a great dividing line on these things because there's such different teams, such different personalities, such different coaching styles that's always a good way to do it. And it's funny, there's been so many players coming and going over the years. It's getting a little tough to keep straight without looking at a all-time Chiefs roster who played with whom. So I sometimes I have to go to you and say, hey, did you play with player X or player Y or player Z? Because I'm not sure I have that straight. But it definitely is something I try to categorize by coach. And there's been a few of them now, no doubt.
Well, more with ESPN's Adam Teicher in a second. But first, basketball fans, it's that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. It's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, to political props. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. We're here with Adam Teicher. Be sure to check out his articles on ESPN.com about the Chiefs. Was, of course, with the Kansas City Star before that. Adam, what do you have maybe a favorite story in all these Chiefs stories that you've written, or maybe even a favorite game from these years of Chiefs coverage?
Oh, there have been a lot of memorable games. I came across the highlights, the 30-year anniversary of the Joe Valerio touchdown catching win over the Denver Broncos on Monday night was recently. It was about 2 weeks ago, and somebody was sending out highlights. And boy, that game just, that was one of the great, even after what the Chiefs have accomplished the last years, that was still one of the great games of Chiefs of all time in Chiefs history. And Joe, I kind of forgot that Joe had caught a touchdown pass in that game. So it was fun to relive that moment. And so that, that one stands out, but there's just
that was the right answer, right, Joe? Was it that it was really just to make sure that you got that as we gave him some money before the pod here to answer that question.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah,
sorry, Adam,
the money hasn't hit
Appreciate the shout
out. But there's been some that have been not as memorable or to maybe most fans, but I can remember some games that wouldn't stand out necessarily to a lot of Chiefs fans after all these years, but just for one reason or another stand out. So if you could say, hey, 1996 Chiefs Broncos in Denver, I could probably come up with a couple memories of that game, or whatever that game might be. So it is. There have been hundreds of games now, but usually there's a memory to just about every one of them.
Well, I guess the biggest common thread, Adam, has got to be the Hunt family, right? Because there have been multiple presidents, multiple GMs, many coaches, many players, but the one thing that really hasn't changed is the Hunt family. And how has like the relationship with the city evolved, changed, and what have you seen from that, sort of patriarchal family of the NFL/AFL? What's that been like for you to watch that either evolve or not evolve based on the fact that they have been the one big common thread throughout your career?
Yeah, well, the story that sticks out in my mind about the Hunt family, and particularly with Clark Hunt, revolves around the time he took over from his father, Lamar, after Lamar passed away back in 2006. I remember this was the time where the Chiefs were looking to turn everything over, and Carl Peterson was headed into his last season, and Herm Edwards was coaching the Chiefs at the time, and he was headed into his last season. And I remember at the end of the season, the Chiefs had finished something like 4-12, and I went to see Clark in his suite at Arrowhead after this week or so after the season was over, and there was snow everywhere. The field was covered with snow, and there was no reason to clean it off. The Chiefs weren't playing in the playoffs or needing that field anytime soon. I just remember sitting up there watching the snow fall and it pile up, but he was talking about his plans for the future and how he wanted to build the Chiefs. And that day stands out vividly to me because some of the things he said are some of the things that have played out here. It took him a while to figure it out. I mean, his first general manager hire was Scott Pioli. It didn't work out very well. His first coaching hire was Todd Haley. That didn't work out very well. His second coaching hire was Romeo Crennel. That didn't work out real well. But eventually they got it right with the guys he did hire. And I think that the vision he laid out for what he wanted the Chiefs to become and how they were going to do that was very similar to what's happened today. So I just had the feeling that day that things were going to work out for the Chiefs, even though it was a dark day and no one could see any kind of bright future for the Chiefs after a 4-12 season. I thought there was some hope there because of his vision for the Chiefs and how he wanted to go about this. I didn't think it was just a wish list. I think he knew exactly how he wanted to go about this. And sure enough, it's come to pass. I don't think anybody could have predicted this kind of success for the Chiefs, but it was not hard to see that maybe the Chiefs were going to be maybe a more consistent program than what they've been over the years.
That's a great anecdote, Adam. And when they did turn that corner, it of course starts with Clark Hunt hiring Andy Reid. I kind of think the Chiefs are going to be championship contenders, championship favorites, perhaps, as long as Andy Reid and Mahomes there. Do you think does his contract go through? Is it 2029? Do you see that as? Do you think Andy Reid coaches through that, past that, until that, or you can't really tell? And do you kind of agree that is their kind of the championship window for the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable that he could coach that long. I don't know if he will or not. There's health issues and other things that could get in the way. But I'll tell you this, though. Andy Reid has coached football his whole life for a team like this. And he didn't do a whole lot else. I've had, a number of people say, well, he doesn't play golf. He doesn't hunt. He doesn't fish. He likes to play with his grandkids, but does that fill up every single day? No, he likes to coach football. And even when he goes on vacation, they have a beach house out in California. When he's able to get out there, he takes work with them. And this is outside of the season. He still takes work with them because he enjoys watching football video in his free time. So my point is, why would you want to step away from that unless you have to, unless there's health issues, family issues? I just don't see him stepping away anytime soon. Doesn't mean he won't, but I can't see that. I think he'll be coaching the Chiefs for the foreseeable future. And again, unless there's some kind of family issue or health issue or whatever, I think he'll be coaching the Chiefs for a while.
Yeah. Does winning cure that? If he were, if he were in a stressful situation, just picking on the team that I'm, geographically closest to, living here in the Philadelphia area, like with the Eagles, like the last couple of weeks with Nick Sirianni, right? The up and down of his, love affair, passionate hating of the fans, and just all this swirling chaos. Like, do you think that's stressful, right? Like, it's got to be stressful for a coach. I remember,
Sure.
just in my life being around coaches where things weren't going well. And do you think that helps? Does that cure all? And does that keep Andy sort of in that mix that he just doesn't seem like he's flappable, like he's unflappable. He's just
Yeah,
so stress-free.
I think it helps coaching in a market like Kansas City, where I've talked to him a little bit about it. I talked to Dick Vermeil about it back when he was coaching the Chiefs. Of course, he had once coached in Philadelphia as well, and he just said the fans are just they're as passionate in Kansas City as they are in Philadelphia, but they're a little more forgiving than they are in Philadelphia, and I think that has helped Andy Reid a little bit out here. And you talk about Nick Sirianni's current situation. A lot of that, or maybe at least some of that, was his doing, and I can't see Andy Reid ever putting himself in that kind of situation. So he doesn't have himself to blame for any of this stuff either. So yeah, I think it does help him that this thing is well established, and he's got a coaching staff that likes working with him. It's been in place for a while. Everybody knows him. He knows everybody. It's almost as close to the ideal situation as a head coach can get. So, not to say there isn't stress or pressure. There is. I don't want to say that much, but certainly he's got it a pretty good situation given what it could be or what it is for a lot of people around the league.
Yeah. Well, Adam, and with that said, focus more on you and your awesome career. Tell our listeners, like, what's changed most about covering a team over the 30 years that you and 32, right? If we go back to 1991, right, when I was drafted, 33 years almost now. Like, what has changed for you personally? What has changed for you in your career as a profession over those 33 years, which it's hard for me to actually say that sometimes, that it was 33 years ago when I put that arrowhead on my helmet. What's been, good, bad, ugly? Like, what's different about it? What do you like? What don't you like?
Well, it's a lot harder to get to know the players and coaches now than it was back then. I mean, for instance, we were talking before we started recording about not only you and how you and I go way back and have talked to each other numerous times over the years, but a lot of your teammates from back in the day. And I run into players from those early Chiefs teams that I covered, guys like J.J. Burden and Danon Hughes and Ricky Sigler and players like that. And Nick Lowry, and we immediately start telling stories about the old days. Now it's just not that way. You could get to know the players a lot better, and the coaches too. I remember when I first started, I would, as long as the coach's door was open, I'd walk down the hallway of the coaching offices, and if the coach's door was open, I was welcome to sit down and watch video with them, and a lot of them were happy to explain to me things they'd seen on video, what they were seeing, and explain why certain play happened. And it was just a great education and a good way to get to know people. And now it's just not that way anymore. And I guess that's the biggest thing, that and the advent of social media and a 24/7, 365 news cycle. It's just changed almost upside down. It's almost unrecognizable from what it was. And so it's been quite an adjustment in that regard. And it's not always been easy, I'll say that much. I mean, now I'm on camera a lot. I'm asked to do TV and video things. I wasn't, certainly when I started, that was never part of the job. So it's a different way of reporting, and that's fine. But it's just having to do things a different way. And so it certainly is different and challenging, but still fun for sure.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick pause here. Well, Adam, what made you decide that it was kind of time to retire?
Oh, there's a lot that goes into it, but it's just time. You just sort of know that it's time, and my wife and I have other things we want to do, and we're actually going to be moving to Colorado next summer. And so it was just time. We were ready to go. And there's not a whole lot that I want to that's left for me to do in this business. I have basically achieved everything I wanted to. And so it's time to go. It's been fun to see what's happened to the Chiefs organization as we talked about what they were and what they've become. It's just amazing, and feel really good for all the fans that have stuck with the Chiefs and were fans of the Chiefs back in the bad old days. But so it's fun to see the transformation. And I always have told people, winning or losing for the Chiefs really hasn't mattered to me, because I've never been promoted or given a raise or anything like that because the Chiefs won, and I've never been demoted or had to take a pay cut or been fired or whatever because they lost. So I was never wrapped up in that part of it. But getting to see the success of the franchise and getting to see, again, what the Chiefs go from what they were to what they are now has been fun. I feel like I would have missed something had that not happened. There was a time where I felt like, what, if I don't get a Super Bowl for the Chiefs, what am I missing? I mean, it's not that, it's just another game. But now I can see after doing what, 4 of them now, I can see that it's not just another game, and it is a big deal. And I think the first one, the one against the 49ers, Super Bowl 54, was just such an eye opener down in Miami. I remember there was a friend of mine who was down in Miami. He lives here, but he was down there. He'd organized a party for Chiefs fans down there in Fort Lauderdale the night before the game, and he asked me to come by, and so I did. And I saw a number of Joe, your former teammates. John Alt was there, Tim Grunhard was there, a number of guys were there, and I was said to some, a remark to somebody, people were just going nuts. There was a couple thousand people, a lot of people there. And I remember saying to somebody, this is what it looks like when your team hasn't gone to the Super Bowl for 50 years. Yeah. And that memory, well, it had nothing to do with the game itself or the Chiefs themselves, but it had to do with their fans. And that will always stick with me. And I was glad I was able to see that. I really am glad I went that night and got to see these people just letting loose after 50 years. Their team was going to the Super Bowl. So it was really fun to see, and I'm glad I got to be a part of that. So this is a long-winded way of answering the question.
Wow. So Adam, if you had to pick a team or two that were some of your air quote favorites outside of the Chiefs, obviously covering them for your career, what were some other memorable teams, either from something that happened that made you like them, or maybe something happened that made you not like them? Like, what are some other memorable teams that you just hold on to and you think about, okay, I'm going to put the Chiefs aside, I'm going to think about some of the other 31 NFL teams?
Well, it's hard to, being not part of the organization, but being sort of attached or embedded with the Chiefs, whatever you might want to call it. It's kind of hard to get to know too many people or too many teams outside the organization. But I do have some, favorite Chiefs eras that have nothing to do with the Super Bowl era. I love covering Dick Vermeil's teams. His teams were so much fun, and he was so accommodating, and his staff was so accommodating, and his players were accommodating, and he sort of liked to give fans a peek through the media at how things were and how they went about their business. So even though most of those teams weren't very good, other than the one year that they won the AFC West, that was still a fun era. And even the Herm Edwards era, I thought was a lot of fun. The Chiefs had started that. They were always trying to patch things together from year to year and never wanted to start a rebuild. And they finally started it with Herm Edwards. And it didn't go very well because the Chiefs generally weren't very good at drafting. But those were still fun teams to cover, and it was something different. So those were sort of my favorite era of the non-Super Bowl era, the non-Andy Reid era. Now, my least favorite was the Todd Haley years. Those were no fun at all. had nothing to do with winning or losing. He was a pain to deal with. It was always something with him, and I'm very glad that he's not around anymore. Let's put it that way.
That's interesting to hear. Yeah, do you have maybe like a couple players throughout the years, maybe the all-time quotes or kind of best interview subjects on the Chiefs during all those years?
You mean present company accepted?
Company excluded.
You don't get too many Ivy League guys running through Arrowhead. So, as far as it's hard to single out
Sure.
too many individuals. I mean, there's so many players that to this day, I still enjoy. Whenever we come across one another. It's just fun to talk to and reminisce. Every time I run into J.J. Burton, one of my favorite all-time Chiefs players. He was a starting wide receiver on the Chiefs when I first started my first year or two, and he's just a fun guy who has been living out in Oregon, or I think he moved to Arizona maybe, but he's somewhere out west, and we don't cross paths a whole lot, but he's fun to run into, and that's just one example. There's a whole bunch, and a lot of them from that early era of Chiefs football, when Joe played back in those days. I mean, it's still fun to run into those guys and have occasion to talk to them.
Were you able to interview Joe a lot, or was there the kangaroo court lineman rules in those days?
Well, Joe was so popular with the media in the locker room that it was hard to get in that group. There was always 10 or 12 guys crowded around his locker every day. I could never get my way in there. So,
well, then I became one. I'm working at KNBC and and the Fox doing the radio, and I was right there with Adam with the press pass. So I had my player pass, and then I had my press pass right next to it.
I hear you on 810 in Kansas City every week on the radio. So you're one of us now. But yeah, Joe was great. And I value, we don't run across each other. Joe, I haven't seen you in Kansas City probably in a while, or anywhere else for that matter. But I feel like you and I kind of pick up where we left off every time I see you.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Adam. You were a fantastic partner and teammate in that whole mix, is for the players, make them feel comfortable and never feeling like we were ever going to say anything that could be used against us. You really are a true pro, and always comfortable to talk to, knowing that we could just talk to you. Today I can only imagine how players think about their public persona, and between all the social media outlets and phones that have cameras and everything, it's gotten really tricky. But even back then, with the limited amount of exposure that we had, usually it was generally the TV stations, the radio, and the papers. With you, we always felt super comfortable just with you being there. Just same way the coaches felt comfortable you coming in and watching film. They certainly, in today's environment, I couldn't imagine what that would be like for a coach to think that someone from the media would be coming in and wondering what's in their bag, a recorder, a phone that's recording, whatever, a drone that's flying around. Like, who knows these days, right? And you really were a tremendous, partner in that experience with all of us. So thank you for that.
Well, that's nice of you to say. I do know there are at least a few of your teammates from that back in the day who would disagree with you on that. But, that's another story for another time. But it's just you and several of your teammates, certainly you weren't the only one, just sort of intuitively understood the role of myself and others like me back in the day. And now it's a lot harder to find people who understand what the media wants to do. And I don't know why that is. I don't know why you and people from your era were just more apt to pick up on that. Certainly there's some players in modern who play for the Chiefs today who understand it. And I'll say Patrick Mahomes is one of them. He gets the role of the media and tries to help, and I really appreciate him for that. So certainly there are some players, but back in your day, Joe, there were a lot of them who really understood what the role of the media was. And I do run across some of your former teammates who do talk about dealing with the media and how they maybe wish they were better at it back then. And sort of expressed some regret that they weren't. You know, they sort of, even if they didn't maybe get it back then, they get it now.
Well, Adam, listen, I read your stuff growing up when you were the star. I read you as an adult when you're on ESPN, and I even had the pleasure of editing your book. Man, you're going to be missed. You did such an awesome job covering the Chiefs.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Way to make me feel old here, okay?
That wasn't the intent. Well, if you enjoy this show presented by Bet Online, please subscribe. We're available on your favorite directories: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Luminary, and TuneIn. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week, and be sure to check out all Adam's articles on ESPN.com.